Welcome to the November episode of Amiga Ireland. I'm Irla.
I'm Rob.
I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
Welcome to our guest presenter today, James. Is Rob's son. How old is James now, Rob?
He's pushing 2.5. Yeah, not quite there, but yeah.
Good man himself. In today's episode, we have Amiga Joker's 30th anniversary issue is out.
Some of the finer details of the origins of the QWERTY keyboard layout.
And on iBrowse, 2.1 web browser is still progressing.
All this and our usual news, games, events, music and troubleshooting. Before we get down to business, how is everybody?
Scary how quickly the months are going by, but it's all good. I've got John Gervin's Dodgy Rocks that I'm porting to Amiga. That'll hopefully make an appearance now at the Amiga Ireland show in January.
Excellent.
But yeah, that's going quite well. We've got the core of it done and it looks pretty good. It's running reasonably well. Between that and working on Stephen Jones's Checkmate 1500, that's basically taken up all my spare time for the last month.
Well, you have a lot to show for it, that's for sure. I got invited to an event in January called Amiga Ireland by Erlen Dahl. I logged into Facebook, and there was a notification there. You've been invited to an event happening in January. So thanks, Erlen, for the invitation. That's great.
Sounds good. You should check it out.
Yeah, look into it.
Yeah, seems like a good fun and good party. Good meetup.
We've also had our first Friday club at the museum, and that was great fun. We played a new game. Our projector's been up and running and working consistently now for the last few meetings, so we've had some new faces there. Hi to James, hi to Manus. We played a couple of games there. Midnight Commando was one we played in the projector, and that was really nice to go back to. It's actually a Commodore 64 memory for me, but the Amiga conversion is so good that it's just as good as the Commodore 64. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. I've also been reading, this isn't really Amiga related as well, there is a game for it, but the Terminator 2, the T2 trilogy of novels. Guys, have you seen the movie that's out in the cinema?
The current one, no, I haven't.
No, not yet.
Not yet, yeah.
No.
I'll tell you, the book picks up from the very last scene of Terminator 2, where they've melted down the T-101 Arnie, and they've left.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after that, the fire crew have arrived at the Dyson laboratories, where they were trying to reconstruct the Terminator, and Sarah Connor and John are on the run after having previously brought Miles Dyson's mother and kids to a motel, and they're waiting in the motel for Miles to come back. Of course, they don't know what's happened to him. The writing is incredible. I swear to God, I'm not a massive fan of reading, but it just pulls you in. The way it's written and the descriptions and the explanations for why things are the way they are brilliant. Anyway, it's an amazing book. I don't have it right in front of me now to tell you who wrote it, but it's well worth checking out. And it's better than the game, obviously, on the computer and the Commodore 64, the Amiga. So, that's been my month. That's been the interesting part anyway, besides all the boring stuff. How about you, Luke?
Well, I've been setting up a system with a lot of tweaks and upgrades on my Amiga 600. It's Amiga 3.1, but I like building it the way I like it, on my own, so I always start from scratch, and I put layers of patches, if I may say like that. So I've got absolute control over my system, and I know what's going on under the hood, which later on allows me to upgrade it and update it in the future as well.
Absolutely, that's how I set up my machines as well.
Still loads to do. I remember last time I did that with my 1200, it took me a week.
Yeah.
So slowly progressing.
So this is the real reason you set up your shop, isn't it? Your retro stamp shop. Luke is continuously adding on stuff.
Upgrading, updating, progressing, yes.
Very good.
Right, let's go on to the news. First up, Amiga Joker's 30th anniversary issue is available for sale now, and this is really nice because the original Joker team has come together to release this. Okay, so in this issue, it's in German, but if you've done Leave Insert German, you'll actually pick up, just the essentials easily. And if you have Google Translate on your phone, you can just point at the paragraphs, which is another thing I did, and it translates the whole lot. So there's a load of interesting stuff in here, but they've done something really interesting, right? And they've gotten their old game scores and they've reviewed them. One of the most interesting ones is Rise of the Robots. They've got their review from December 1994, where they gave it 91%.
What?
Yeah.
No,
they clearly just looked at the box, did they?
That 91% probably for graphics. Because graphics is pretty alright.
That's
Graphics
fair.
got 88, animation 92, music 84, sound effects 86, handling 90%, Dowers pass 92%.
No. Someone obviously didn't play that game. He had just seen screenshots probably.
Well, the score they gave it this time around was 32%. And they said the reason they gave it even that was that, if you like a light, easy game that's not hard to beat your way through other than being challenged too much, this is at least has that going for it. Now, my German isn't brilliant, but they gave a few reasons for this, the old previous score. One was that the demo they were given was very limited, but they were also given assurances of what was coming and that the review was based on that. Also, they also are critical of the review overall anyway, so that one's worth a look.
Very good.
Turrican 2 went from 89% to 87%. Lemmings went from 90% to 78%, which is interesting, and I haven't actually had time to read. There's lots more in it. AJ, the founder, is in the interview. Michael Labiner, he's the Amiga Joker founder. He talks about the team and faked tests that happened. I'm not sure who was doing the fake tests. And then they start reviewing the modern games that are being released and how much fun are they, and do they capture the spirit and the fun of the old games. Personally, I think if you were going to buy one issue of Amiga Joker, that's a good one. The cover art is really good, and it's up there with Amiga Future, KA Plus magazines, and some of the others that I've forgotten the names of at the moment.
Okay, a couple of weeks ago we had West Meetup. So that's a yearly event that happens in California, and it's sort of more focused on the actual Amiga OS development, and that's usually sort of the key people from Amiga OS development involved in that, rather than being a sort of a big user meeting like Amiga Ireland is. So so we got some news from it. Usually you get a couple of snippets and stuff, so nothing huge, but we've got some news on the Tabor board being, it's been in sort of limbo for years. And so basically they've had to rework it because there are a couple of parts that are obsoleted on it, but they're starting to work on that. Yeah. And they're starting to kickstart the driver development again, so that it will eventually happen, supposedly. So, hopefully that'll come along now without too much more delay. But one of the big things that they were missing was the sound driver for the onboard sound chip, and that's being worked on now apparently. So good news for that. And there were some other little snippets from from other parts of the OS and the various support stuff for Amiga OS 4. Plenty of reports on the details and stuff around on the various Amiga websites that you can check out. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, very eventful.
It's always an interesting one because it might only have like 15 or 20 people at it, but it's kind of like some important stuff happens there, Amiga OS wise, anyway, Yeah.
Perry Kivolowitz has been awarded the 2019 Engineering Emmy Award for Silhouette Effects. Silhouette Effects, it was used for many films like Avatar, District 9 and Blade Runner 2049. But apart from that, I haven't heard about this gentleman.
No.
And Silhouette Effects as well, to be honest. So maybe you know anything, guys.
It was the AEON post actually that alerted me to this. It was, and they captioned that AEON put on this was, "It all started on Amiga," and how true that was. Mm-hmm. They created Amiga hardware and software like Morph Plus, which was ported to other platforms and used in the early days on things like the Iron Giant, Deep Space Nine.
Oh, I remember Morph Plus. Yes, yeah. I remember.
Independence Day, The Mask, Batman Forever. Yeah.
So it's one of these things like Lightwave and stuff that's continued on.
That's right.
Yeah, later on. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Wow. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
On Morpheus, the Morpheus word processor version 1.0 has been released, and this supports RTF and ODT, which is actually quite cool because ODT is supported by all the modern processors. So if that support is as good as it looks, this is a word processor. You can actually, receive documents from colleagues or, anybody and work with and return and work from your machine. So that's pretty cool.
Stephen Jones's Checkmate 1500 Plus case project has some news. The first batch of 600 is completely sold out, and they've most of the way through shipping them. So there are a few left to ship, but all sold out, which is amazing. And he has opened pre-orders for a second batch. So there are going to be another 600 odd cases built. I think it's 600, might be 500. But anyways, yeah, another few hundred cases are going to be built, but he's taking pre-orders now on the Checkmate website. So if you missed out in the first round, now is your chance, because I don't know if you'll get a third round out of it. But yeah, that's it. So that opened a few days ago, and on the first day, he already had 70 orders. It's definitely a popular one. So yeah, get your order in.
I've had a quick look recently during our Norwich Amiga meeting. It was a white case, and I must say that it looks really stylish. It's in my opinion, it's a crossover between like a 3000 and 1000, and
yeah,
it's very versatile as well. Very spacious inside. It looks really nice.
Absolutely, it's a lovely case. And like he's sold quite a number of them as PC cases, so even without the Amiga thing, so people are just buying them as a nice
PC case,
different PC case, because they'll only take the small boards, micro ATX and ITX boards, but it's a lovely case.
Right, regarding Ami West, an Amiga laptop was among items of interest, and it's still in the design phase, but I think I've seen a designing phase of a laptop, like from previous Ami West meetings. What was the name of the guy who actually makes video drivers?
Yeah, he was 3D printing the case, wasn't he? Hans de Ruyter, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's the one. I think he's been designing a laptop as well. With a Tabor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was designing for the ITX boards. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I didn't really catch this one, so I'm not really sure what's involved in that. But there's been talk of that. There's a couple of false starts on that before.
At least 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, good luck.
Mindscape version 1.3a has been released for OS 4. This is a mind mapping tool, and if you visit the site or the link we have here, you can see some screenshots. This version allows you to group objects together in your mind maps or your layouts. One example they have here is actually a PCB layout, so it's not just mind mapping. And the latest version lets you, as I said, group objects together and then move them or manipulate them as a group. But also bundled with the download is a preview of version 2.0, which is currently in development. So if you find using a mind mapping tool and you're on OS 4, this one looks perfect.
Yeah, I've played with an early version of that, and it's pretty good. It's sort of, it was a good while ago now, so it was limited in what it could do, but yeah, it's a really nice tool for putting down ideas and stuff. So it's good to see that it's getting some love now, because it was went through a few years of not having any updates. So it's nice to see it being worked on again. There's a Synergy client that's been sort of rewritten and released for OS 4. And that's, if you don't know what Synergy is basically, it's like sort of a sharing your mouse and keyboard over the desktop. So it's like remote desktop, but without the video sending. It's a bit, it's cut down version. It's very cool. It wasn't Synergy I was using, but I was using a similar tool years ago, and it's very handy. But the thing with Synergy is that it's available for all the major OSs. So it lets you share keyboard and mouse across the network with your PC or your Mac, your Linux machines. And it's really, really nice little bit of software. And so you should check that out as well, because, especially if you've got limited desk space, it could be quite useful. Rob,
in your opinion, right, how plausible would it be to have a client on OS 3?
It shouldn't be a big deal at all. Shouldn't be a big deal at all. I had one, that was the thing, it wasn't Synergy, but it was, I can't remember the name of it, but it worked over Serial. But that worked fine. Oh, interesting. It was absolutely no problem. It's very minimal overhead and stuff like that. So I can't imagine it being a massive deal, especially if it's open source. It could be easily ported back to OS 3. Because I think it is open source and it's a GPL thing. So you check out the OS 4 source, because it might be a simple enough job to port that.
Oh, that is interesting.
There's a project for the dark winter nights.
Right, we've got another thing. We've got ADF Master as an application for Mac OS X, and it seems to be a very useful application, because thanks to that, you don't need an emulator actually to run EUAE to modify your ADF files. Especially useful for those people who use GoTech drives extensively, because they rely on ADF files.
I have to do everything through this file manager where I share the files. I download from the internet, goes into this folder, then fire up the emulator, CD into that directory, and extract the LHA from there. And to be able to just
drag it onto a blank ADF or something.
Yeah, just to drag and drop a few things onto an ADF would be really handy.
Yeah.
And Amiga Rocks is a triple album of Amiga music by the Norwegian band Fast Loaders. This Kickstarter campaign is to create a CD of no less than 30 Amiga classics, including Supercars 2, Shadow of the Beast, Unreal, Turrican, Castle Master, Ghouls and Ghost, Battle Squadron, Lost Patrol, Golden Axe, Final Fight, X Out, Dogs of War, Lotus, Cannon Fodder, Hero Quest, Chuck Rock, LED Storm. Yeah, you can go and support that now if you're interested, and you can look up the Fast Loaders and see what you think of their style.
Eyebrows has got a little update. 2.5 was released a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite popular because, it's an update's been a long time coming. But so this is basically a sort of a point release, so 2.5.1, and it's mainly a bug fixes. So there's a lot of sort of bug fixes and minor tweaks that it's had, a lot involving or revolving around the graphics rendering and image rendering and stuff like that. So lots of small tweaks and lots of fixes there. So anyone who has the latest version, it's probably a surefire update.
Cool, very nice. I'm really glad it progresses, to be honest, after such a long gap from 2006. Right, sysinfo, another, a thing from the past that gets an update. Sysinfo 4.3 with the 060 support. And that's a very good thing because I still use that program, to be honest, and it's got a very nice and very clear graphic user interface, and I've just been using it for quite some time, and I really like it. So I'm really glad it's got the 060 support. I wonder if it's got support for Vampire as well. I don't know that. I haven't checked that yet.
I think there was a patched version for the Vampire anyway, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm, I think it was, but I'm curious about this version.
Maybe they've rolled it into the main version.
Maybe.
This one supports Vampire 080.
Oh, very good.
Okay, that's
there you
good
go.
then. So they've done that already.
So should run on pretty much everything now. Cool.
Yeah, nice. AmigaNews.de is indexing recorded Amiga developer sessions at AmiWest. So you can just go to AmigaNews.de and follow as they're uploaded there. There's some good ones. Stephen Solly is speaking about Exec SG. Mark Ritters talks about his text editor Struct. Tony Wyatt talks about programming graphics drivers for Amiga OS 4.1, and there's a presentation of Rob Nicholson, one of the original developers of the Amiga. So some nice viewing there, all in one handy, easy to access place on amiga-news.de.
And last news item for this episode, Picasso 96 or P96 has the latest version of that by individual computers, a minor update that fixes a bug basically when graphics copying operations. So if you've had glitches when you're moving objects around the screen, this could be a fix for you. So that's available from the icon pages where you got the latest download.
Okay, let's move on to the games. Cock and Quigua Rally by Guillermo Amat is available for download now on AmiNet. This is a kids driving game, and it's got some really nice options in it. You can choose the type of car, whether it's a Jeep or a Mini or a sports car, and they all have different handling. The sports car can go faster, but the slower cars can jump higher maybe. You can change the colour of the car, and you can change the driver, to be, to kind of be more feminine looking with long hair, or to be more masculine looking. It's a nice little game. It's a nice game for a kid. It's easy to play, and I enjoyed it myself. So, yeah, there you go.
The Murky Woods text adventure has been released as an AREX game, so I haven't actually had a look at this yet. This was an old text adventure from back in the day. It seems like, someone's ported it to AREX, but from what I gather, this is sort of like it runs in AREX, but you access it through a terminal. Is that right? It's like it's over TCP, or maybe I'm picking that up wrong.
Yeah, I actually emailed the developer because I just tried to do RX space name the thing to run it, and it didn't work. So he said, actually, this game, it runs in a CNET BBS, not standalone. So log into the BBS and play the game there. So
there you go. Yeah. That's awesome. That makes it even more interesting, to be honest. Like a BBS game getting released, that's nuts.
Another thing, Sarah Jane Avery is featured in an article on her long history of game development. Well, this lady, she's been involved in development of a nice RPG game for C64. I've been following her Twitter account, and she's been publishing different updates on a regular basis. And recently, I think she started her work on a shoot 'em up game as well. I don't remember if it's for C64 or for Amiga, but she's been very productive. I hope she finishes all those projects, because they look very, very interesting.
Yeah, she's an interesting history. It's a long, deep-looking interview, actually, so I must give it a look. Also in gaming, a preview of Rotator has been released. This is a modernised update of an original 90s game, and it's developed by the original team again. It was never released properly, according to the article on Vintage is the New Old, and will be available to buy. So there's a good write-up on it there, and it does look nice, I have to say.
There's been an early preview of Saboteur for the Amiga. Now, this is an old C64, was it? 8-bit game anyway?
Yeah, C64. And so actually, this game was first released on Spectrum in 1985, as far as I remember.
And
then ported to C64 in 1986 in Amstrad. But right now, it's been it's been getting a version of a port of this for our Amiga. So. I remember I used to play that one, like on my C64, and I played it a lot.
I remember it on the C64 as well, yeah. A friend of mine had it. And it's sort of a side-scrolling kind of a ninja or saboteur kind of person. Yeah. But so far there's it's a bit of a rolling demo. It's sort of more of an engine demo than anything else. It looks the part. Mm-hmm. Definitely. The guy was looking for someone to take over development or to help out with the development. So I hope that gets a bit of attention there. But looks promising anyway.
Very promising. I look forward to that one as well. Right now, we've got another one. Eye of the Beholder's release is getting closer and closer. This is a really massive game. It's just recently had its first intro released, and this game is really massive, and it was released on Amiga and PC, and it was a massive hit. I think it was 1990 or 1991, and the C64 version has been in development for quite some time. It's going to be only an easy flash version because of the loading times, but still this game as an RPG game is just a beautiful and fantastic release if it gets released, and it will get released probably because a massive amount of work has been devoted to that. C64 rocks.
It does. Okay, so there's an RTS game called AI which has been updated and released. It came third in the Speed Game 2019 competition, and this is going to be available through the Indigo App Store. And that App Store has clients for Morpheus, ROS, Windows, Mac, a few different platforms. So if you want to support it, it's an interesting looking game. I haven't installed it yet because I haven't got the client installed yet, but it looks interesting. There's a video preview there. You can check it out. And to be honest, even from the video, I'm not really sure what the hell's going on, so I'm not going to say much about it. But it did get number one for the most original concept. So that's what interests me about the game, that it's something different and unique. So I've
only seen the preview video myself, but it looks like if you have, let's say Dune 2 or Command & Conquer or whatever, and you zoom way, way out, and so each unit is only a pixel. It kind of looks like that. And the pixels are all moving around, and you leave them to their own thing and they'll do their own thing. But, you group them together and you give them commands, and I'll have to see how it plays. It looks very interesting.
Yeah, it's, the story is that you're in control of an AI sending robots to kill humans, but you can't control the robots individually. You can only control them from where and when you send them, or something like that. So yeah, it sounds really good.
Now, Rygar has been released. So this has been a little while in the making as well. So this is a remake of an old, was it an arcade game or was it a C64 game?
No, arcade
it's
game.
Arcade, yeah.
Yeah, very good one.
From what I've seen anyway. So this is the conversion for the Amiga is for AGA Amigas only. It's very colourful. There's a lot going on. It's making use of the hardware, if you like. So, good to see that saw the light of day because it's been talked about for a while. But yeah, it's very good.
Very good one. Very good port. Stoker, a preview of a new platformer for C64. In this game, the main character is a dinosaur. So it immediately brings my attention and my memories to a game called Mayhem in Monsterland. The graphics is really nice with this one. I look forward to the release, to be honest, as I can see from the video, because there's a video in the show notes. The game is really worth playing and worth finishing and worth releasing, so hopefully it'll get released and it'll get finished.
Very good. And Black Dawn, an early preview, can now be downloaded. And this is an Amiga game. It's a kind of a dungeon crawler from a first-person perspective, and the graphics are fantastic. Just the design of the this world is absolutely beautiful. I haven't seen anything quite like it. It's lovely. It's well worth taking a look, and I will definitely be getting myself a copy of this. Actually, I might try out the demo while I have it here. I can't see at a glance what the specs are.
I think it needs an Amiga with 1 megabyte of RAM and OCS ECS, so the specs are not that high, so I'm pretty sure you'll be able to run it. I think it's around 95, 96. There was a whole series of Black Dawn, to be honest. Do you remember that game, Hired Guns?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's something similar, very, very similar with, like upgraded graphics and great atmosphere. So I'm pretty sure it's worth trying, and I think the release is somewhere near as well. Probably December, early December.
Right, let's move on to discoveries. First up, Ghidra is an application for reverse engineering code, and it has support for Motorola 68K. I was looking for a way to reverse engineer Amiga binaries, and I came across this application, and even later again I came across a thread on EAB actually about it. So this was created by the NSA for reverse engineering code, basically, and you would tell it what hardware architecture the code was compiled for, and it would figure out from there. And it includes support for a lot of processors, including Motorola 68K. Now, it doesn't support the custom chips on the Amiga, but so by default. But part of the feature set of Ghidra is that you can teach it new hardware, and I don't think it's quite as direct as supplying a complete blueprint for that hardware. I think there seems to be like a learning piece to it as well, something adaptive. It was more really than I could spend time on, but I did talk to some people who used it, and they reckoned that I could, with enough time, you could do it. They were more experienced than I was. They made it seem quite simple, but I only had so much time, so I didn't get very far with it. But an interesting piece of gear there.
Sounds pretty serious, all right. Now, this is a blog post I came across a little while ago, and I thought it was very interesting. We know why the QWERTY keyboard is how it is, do we?
I've heard the myth is that it was to slow down typists because the hammers on the keyboards were getting jammed when they typed too fast. But I've also heard that that's not strictly true either, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
I thought it was just taken from the typewriters. That was my idea, and just adopted to computers.
Well, that is the case, all right. But why typewriters had that layout, and it is sort of like the common sort of belief that it was basically to slow down the typists, because early on in the typewriters' lives, that the typists very quickly got too fast for them, and they'd get jammed, and the hammers would get jammed against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put the letters in awkward positions. So like the E and the and the vowels are all sort of away from your home keys, if you like. And so there's you have to move your fingers a bit more to get the vowels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the theory. But there's a guy there who's done quite a bit of research and simulations and various, statistical analyses. And he says, well, that's not really the case. And what actually happens is, yes, it's true that typewriters were getting jammed because people were typing too quickly on them. But basically, the reason for the layout wasn't to slow down the typists. It was to move the most common hammers away from each other so they wouldn't collide. So that typists could actually go quicker. So it wasn't trying to slow them down. It was trying to keep the speed up without the collisions. If you think about it, basically what were colliding were two letters that were side by side. So the hammers are very close to each other, and they both hit the paper almost the same time.
Mm-hmm.
E and OR is the common one. Okay. So lots of words have E or E in them. And that they were constantly jamming. So they are actually beside each other on the keyboard. But if you think about how an old typewriter worked, actually the levers for OR and E were 4 spaces apart. So the levers that were beside OR were 4 and F and V. And so it was basically those levers that were never go together. So an OR would never be with an F and never be with a V. That was how it was designed. So the idea was you can actually press E and OR very quickly, and the hammers are 4 spaces apart and they don't collide. And so you can type very, very quickly without breaking your typewriter. And that was the idea. So it's, there's a bit of truth to the getting jammed, but the purpose of it wasn't to slow the typists down.
That makes more sense.
I thought that was amazing.
I used to get bad RSI until I switched to Dvorak, and they did look at the structure of words, where vowels were placed, and so on and so forth. And I think there's Dvorak, for different languages. And then there's another one called Colmac, which is a different philosophy behind it. And there's also left-handed or right-handed Dvorak for if you just want to type with one hand. And there's a James Bond movie where the villain uses that, and he's I forget what his name is, Boris, I think. He's
Boris, yeah.
So you see him spinning a pen in one hand a lot while he's typing with the other, and he's using that.
There you go. So it's kind of layouts would never last on a typewriter, but ideal for later on when the computers came into it, or even electronic typewriters, because then they don't care, they can manage themselves. It was only like the typewriters from the 1800s where the layout was critical, and that's it, and that's why we're stuck with it.
Right, my discovery actually comes from my brother. He sent me a link saying that Internet Archive adds over 2,500 games to play in your browser, and he told me that the other night he spent 4 or 5 hours till 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning playing all those games.
Awesome.
So that's just like a time machine taking you back to early 90s, probably, or first half of the 90s.
Yeah, and so they play, actually, the performance is pretty good on those for a browser. They run pretty well.
Yeah. I've checked the link and they play pretty well, to be honest.
It's quite scary now how powerful JavaScript engine can be. It's mental because it can be multi-threaded, and you've got the modern horsepower is actually astonishing when you look at how inefficient that must be, and you still get performance like that. It's mental. But it's amazing. There's a version of UIE that runs in a browser now as well, and that's nuts. It actually emulates an Amiga in your browser.
Yeah,
it's mental. But it's impressive stuff. Something to be said for 6 4 gigahertz cores of power.
My discovery is Snoopy for Linux, which is a system monitor. So I was trying to figure out what was wrong with an application without going to the full-on Linux, like going through all of the logs and find out what's going on at the deepest level. I just wanted to know what's the application struggling with itself. I think I typed into Google something like Snoop DOS, but for Linux, and this thing came up. So I didn't realize Snoopy. I'd heard of Snoopy before, kind of a later port or adaptation of Snoop DOS. So this one monitors executables running. I was actually unable to get it running due to problems with the installer. There is a suggested fix in the tracker on GitHub, but that didn't work either, and the project appears to be 2 years behind. So it's a pity, because the tools for Linux are great, but sometimes you want something simple, and that would have filled the spot nicely. Something you could just run in the background on your application and just see what's it crying out for,
Still interesting to see Snoop DOS have such an influence on the computing world in general. That if someone did port it or did create a version, something similar along those lines.
A couple of episodes back, we talked about the World Health Organization creating a classification for gaming addiction. A new study that has just come out and has been published is actually suggesting that gaming itself is not the underlying issue with gaming addiction, and the American Psychiatric Association and the World Health Organization are both investigating the causes of online gaming addiction. This is specifically online gaming. The original study claimed that the issues driving addictive behavior need to be investigated and to see, is it caused by the games? Are the games in themselves inherently addictive, or is there a vulnerability in certain people that gets us addicted to games? So this new research is suggesting that it's actually the latter, that, it's a vulnerability in people, not the games. It could be something else. They found fault with the methodologies used in the previous studies that suggested otherwise, that the games were inherently problematic. Some of the headlines for this online as well are brutal. When I was looking up more info about it, there's I don't even want to name them, but the headlines are terrible. Like, they
clickbait-tastic.
Yeah, they bait-tastic, exactly. And they totally they obviously read someone else's article, which was only half right, and then didn't even read that properly. So they said, that this is saying that there is nothing addictive about games, that games are not addictive, and that excessive gaming is okay, but that is not what it's saying. That's
not the case at all. Yeah.
It's saying that people who are, not able, so an addiction is when you're not able to function in your life, to able to have, healthy relationships with people, to turn up at work and get home, sleeping well, all that kind of stuff. Basically, to be able to be what they would call like a well-regulated person, to be able to do the things that you need to do. This is actually saying that it is a maladaptive coping mechanism, but the problem in most cases doesn't stem from the games, which is surprising, because I know there's been a lot of issues online, about loot boxes and things like that. They seem to conclude anyway that at the end of it all, that it is a vulnerability in adults that makes them susceptible to this. So yeah, interesting. One final one for the end of discoveries. AHA is an application for Amiga that converts ANSI escape sequences to HTML for sharing on the web. So this is really handy, because if you have terminal output or something like that, and you want to, pop it up and serve it on a web page to show people whatever your logs look like, you can preserve the formatting this way, and it'll actually spit out the entire web page for you with the the heading and the HTML wrapped around it. So I gave that a quick test run, and it worked really well. Okay, let's move on to events. Hi to all the newcomers at the museum. We had our meetup there for the first Friday of November, and we had a lot of fun on the projector there, actually. It's been working so reliably for us now with the CD32 that it's very easy to switch games, and we've adjusted the lighting too in the middle of the room. We've just darkened it a little bit to make the projector come out nice and clearly, and I tell you, Banshee looks absolutely amazing. Like, everybody just stopped and looked at that, and there were kids coming over playing it who didn't even know, so
that's a game that actually shows what AGA can do.
Yeah,
it's a really good game with a good a playability as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does, yeah. Now, our December date for our first Friday, in inverted commas, is actually going to be pushed forward by a week. So for anyone who's intending to come in December, it's not the first Friday, it's the following Friday, the second Friday. And the reason for that is we want to have a bit of a party, and that week will be Friday the 13th rather than Friday the 13 minus 7. So we're calling this one The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's going to basically, you can come in fancy dress if you like. You can dress as a computer game character. Even that this time around Christmas, the pagan traditions in Ireland, it was still a dark time. So you can dress as something scary as you like, or something Christmassy, anything you like. Yeah, that's the plan. So just keep that in mind, and we'll put out another notification to anyone who's signed up on the mailing list, as well as online. Also, hi to Colin, who popped into the museum, and he's an interest in radio, but also in Commodore PETs, and he is taking a look to see if he can get it up to speed, because it's the one machine that just has been sitting there not working for so long. So thanks for taking a look at it, at least, Colin, and who knows, we might have a working PET in the next couple of months.
Right, we are getting an Amiga Norwich meeting, and it's going to be on the 17th of November, 4 o'clock, that's Sunday. So if you're around Norwich or Norfolk, please visit us. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Lots of people have already visited us from all around England, and we look forward to more.
Yeah, I've seen some good pictures. It looks like a lot of fun and a lot of good stuff on display.
And the last event we have is the Scottish Amiga Users Group Meetup. So we're having a Christmas meetup on Sunday, the 8th of December in Glasgow. So there's a Facebook event set up for that. And yeah, if you happen to be in Scotland or, well, particularly in Glasgow, we're going to be having that meetup near Crossmaloof on the 8th of December from 12 o'clock till 6, and then usual few drinks afterwards and all that. But yeah, so come along and join us.
Very nice.
Okay, it's time for Ask Amiga.
A question that was on the Retro Computing Stack Exchange, and basically someone was asking about whether it was possible to use Workbench 1.3 with Kickstart 1.2. The short answer is yes, it's fine. You probably want to match your Kickstart with your Workbench, but there are plenty of exceptions to that. So for 1.2, there are some old games that only work with Kickstart 1.2. So some people might want to keep 1.2 in their machine. Now, the main difference between 1.2 and 1.3 Kickstarts is that Kickstart 1.3 can boot from a hard drive, whereas 1.2 you need to load the driver for the hard drive controller from floppy disk first. You need to have a boot floppy and then you can use a hard drive the same way. But that's basically one of the main changes, and all the other changes are kind of minor things with Kickstart 1.3, whereas Workbench 1.3 has a lot of big fixes and improvements over Workbench 1.2. So it was possible back in the day to buy Workbench 1.3 and use that on your Kickstart 1.2 machine. And and it works absolutely fine. Later versions generally want to stick to the correct Kickstart version. So if you want to use Workbench 2, you need to have Kickstart 2 really. It won't really run on Kickstart 1.3. There are two different Kickstart 2s in common in the world. The 2.04, which is for the 500 plus, and 2.05, which is for the 600. And the main difference there is that it has support for the side slot, the PCMCIA slot, and for the internal IDE slot on the 600. But the Workbench is the same on both. But then you have Workbench 2.1, which was floppy disk only. So that doesn't have a matching Kickstart, and that'll work on either Kickstart 2.04 or 2.05. Workbench 3, basically the differences between Kickstart 3.0 and 3.1 are mostly bug fixes and a few other changes that are sort of working towards modularization and a couple of changes like that. You might like to have Kickstart 3.1, but it's not absolutely essential, but probably advisable to have 3.1 if you're running 3.1 Workbench. But then 3.5, 3.9 both need Kickstart 3.1. So they're, again, software only. They don't have their own Kickstart. And then the last one is 3.1.4, which is better with its own Kickstart, but can be used with Kickstart 3.1 or 3.0. And you sort of basically soft load the Kickstart then from disk. That's the general gist of it. You can always work around these things by either patching things or soft loading Kickstarts from disk. There are ways around all these things, as with most things on the Amiga. You can fudge it to make it work. But that's the general kind of convention that you should go with, I suppose. An easy life.
There's a version number or something on Workbench that you can check for the OS, which seems to be different again.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. The 1.2, 1.3, that's a release
They're
number.
up in the 40s, these things I was looking at.
Yeah, so like the actual version numbers are like sort of your build number. The way you've got, let's say you've got Windows 7 and that's got like whatever sort of version number it has. And there are lots of different builds within it. So like, the 1.2, 1.3, they're all sort of like 34, version 34, 36. 37 is Workbench 2 and Kickstart 2. 38 is 2.1. 39 is 3.0. 40 is 3.1. And then 44 is 3.5 and 45 is 3.9. 46 is 3.1.4. But there are modules that are shared across them which make it complicated. Like there are certain, like I think trackdisk.device in Workbench 3 is still version 3.7 or 37 from release 2 because there were no changes needed, or things like that. There are a lot of modules that went forwards and backwards, and 3.1.4 uses lots of modules from 3.9. So some of that is for version 44 and version 45. It gets very complicated when you start digging. It gets very complicated very quickly. The internal versions are what actually software will use when it checks. So, if software needs 3.0, it'll actually check for 39. And that's the key bit of information that it'll look for. And that's why the software reports 39.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. I never did make the connection between those three different sets of numbers before, but we have it now. Okay, let's move on to online activity. Our top tweet this month was a tweet we retweeted from Gary Munnelly. and this was about Codemasters teaching about internet community management. That was by Gary Munnelly. On Facebook, 2 joint in first position. We had Jan Pat 2, who finally owns an Amiga 1200. Congrats to you, Jan Pat. And Seamus Doyle shared his advert for Room, as he says, great game. Lots of responses on that one, including one from Mark Conroy, who upgraded from the Commodore 64 based on that game. That's really interesting, actually. That'd be an interesting thing to ask people about, because for me it was Batman the movie when I realised the Commodore 64 didn't cut it anymore and I wanted an Amiga. How about you guys?
Lotus 1 and 2, and the other one was, I think, RoboCop.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah? So especially, like second level when he's on, shooting to some fake targets. That was really... and the digitized speech.
Yeah, that was cool. But the Commodore 64 one had... that not got the digitized speech as well, no?
The version was really well made, but the Amiga version was absolutely astounding.
One of my favourite games on my old Atari 8-bit was Mercenary. And that's out on all the machines. But when you were loading it from tape, a lot of the games used to play ads for different games. And it because I loved that game so much, I always remember that I had an ad during the loading screen for Damocles, the Mercenary 2.
Damocles,
and, and I remember seeing that in a magazine, and, it was all wireframe 3D on the Atari 8-bit, and it was pretty kind of rudimentary graphics-wise, but a great game. But I remember seeing the screenshots for the Amiga and the ST, and it was like solid polygons. I thought, oh my God, this thing must be a beast of a machine,
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, right, well, clearly that's the way to go. And that's it. I'd never actually got the game in the end. But one of the key things that did sort of blow me away then when I was actually looking at it were the two of them, Desert Strike and Lemmings. And they're both far beyond what the 8-bits could do. And
Desert Strike was, my God.
It was fantastic. Because I remember that on the Super Nintendo, and then the Amiga's got a great version of that, actually.
It did, yeah. Yeah, it was nice to hold up against the Super Nintendo, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was there was another thing, another world, the introduction.
Oh,
that was absolutely, mind-blowing at that time.
Yeah, definitely.
We're coming up to the end. We haven't got a song of the month. Lads, have you any suggestions for what song we should play out with?
I don't.
I'd love to have you like a Hoffman or Elman. Actually, I'm going to recommend a song from a 64K release intro, and it's actually one of my my daughter's favourite song. It's called Everyway, and probably the song is called Everyway as well. And my daughter absolutely adores that module and that intro, actually. So it's her favourite intro, and it's her favourite Amiga module for the time being. We've been watching a little bit of demos and demo scene, and she really enjoys that particular intro and that particular song.
Can't forget as well, new members on the Facebook group. Shane Clinton. Oh, and thanks to Shane, by the way, for the lend of the Ultimate 2 Plus for the Commodore 64. That's why I've ordered the adapters to connect my Commodore 64 properly now. And hi also to Ravi Abbott, Owen McMahon,
Stephen Chan, Sudaxos Amiga, and Martin Brearley.
Paweł Kupczak, Archie Patton, and the Media Computer.
You're all welcome. I hope we see you at some of the in-person events, especially the one in January. That's it until next time.
Music was by Virtual Dimensions, Banjo Gaioli, of course.
Please leave us a review wherever you listen to us.
Yep, and we'll see you early in December again with our next episode. And we are playing out, especially for Pola. What's Pola's song, Luke?
Every Way.
Enjoy, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
original Joker team has come together to release this, and my notes have just slid off to the side of my screen where I can't actually read them.
Whoa.
Sorry, that might have been me moving that. I couldn't read it.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was the CSS from the plugin. Oh, it's okay.
There we go. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. Leave it like that.
I clearly have a bigger screen than you.